Chosen one, pause right here. Not because the algorithm brought you, not because you were searching aimlessly, but because this moment was already written into God's timing. You did not arrive here by accident. There are moments when heaven interrupts the noise of a long day, the quiet of a late night, or the weight you've been carrying silently, and gently pulls your attention toward a word that was meant for you. This is one of those moments, and even if part of you feels tired, skeptical, or hesitant to hope again, your spirit recognized this before your mind did. Take a slow breath. Let your shoulders soften. You are safe here, chosen one. The delay you've been wrestling with has never been a sign of rejection. It has been evidence of precision. God does not rush what is sacred. He does not release what you are not yet prepared to carry. And He does not forget those who wait on Him, even when the waiting stretches longer than you imagined it ever would. You've asked questions in the quiet, late at night, in moments when no one else could hear. Did I miss it? Did I misunderstand you? God, why does it feel like everyone else moved forward while I stayed behind? If those thoughts sound familiar, let me say this gently but clearly. You are not behind. You are not late. And you are not overlooked. You are right on time. The timing of God is not measured by calendars, birthdays, or the expectations of people who never carried your calling. His timing is measured by readiness, by alignment, by protection, and what He delayed in your life. He delayed not to deny you, but to prepare you, and to prepare what is coming toward you. Chosen one. Some blessings are delayed because they are light. Others are delayed because they are heavy. And the heavier the assignment, the more carefully God handles the release. There are things connected to your life that could not afford to arrive early. Not because you were unworthy, but because early arrival would have crushed you, distracted you, or drawn you into something you weren't yet equipped to discern. God saw dangers you couldn't see. He saw entanglements you prayed to avoid later without even knowing their names. And in His mercy, He withheld not out of punishment, but out of love. This is important for you to hear tonight. The silence you walked through was not emptiness. It was preparation happening quietly. It was heaven working behind the scenes while you learned how to stand without applause, how to trust without proof, how to remain faithful without immediate reward. Chosen one. This message is not for everyone. It is for those who kept believing, even when believing became exhausting. For those who stayed tender in a world that tried to harden them. For those who felt called early, but saw fulfillment come late. For those who were misunderstood, doubted, or quietly dismissed, sometimes even by the people closest to them. God sees you. And right now, He is not asking you to strive, figure everything out, or force anything into place. He is asking you to listen, to receive, to come into agreement with what He has already been doing in your life, even when you couldn't see it clearly. Because here is the truth: the enemy never wanted you to understand. The delay did not weaken you. It refined you. It stripped away desperation. It taught you discernment. It shifted your desire from excitement to peace, from appearance to substance, from temporary relief to lasting alignment. You are not the same person you were when you first prayed for what you're still waiting on. And that change matters. Chosen one. God does not give sacred things to versions of us that would mishandle them. He waits until our hands are steady, until our hearts are anchored, until we no longer confuse intensity with confirmation. That is why this season feels different. You may not have all the answers yet, but something inside you has grown quieter, more grounded, less frantic. That is not resignation. That is readiness, and heaven recognizes it. If your spirit feels stirred right now, not anxious, but alert, that is not coincidence. That is resonance. Something in you is responding to truth, even if your mind hasn't caught up yet. So before we go any further, I want you to do something simple, but meaningful. If this message feels like confirmation, if something in you knows this is for you, if you are choosing to trust God's timing again, even after the waiting, type Amen in the comments. Not as a superstition, not as a performance, but as a quiet act of agreement, a way of saying, God, I trust you even here, chosen one. As you do that, understand this agreement shifts posture. It opens space. It aligns your heart with what heaven has already scheduled. You are not activating something new. You are acknowledging what God has been preparing all along. Stay with me. Do not rush away from this moment, because what you are about to understand will finally explain why the delay was necessary, why the silence lasted longer than you expected, and why this season could not come sooner than it did. You are not waiting in vain. You are being aligned. And tonight, this is only the beginning. Chosen one. Now that your spirit has settled into this moment, let us go deeper quietly, without rushing into what has been shaping you beneath the surface. Not the obvious things people could see, not the milestones others measure, but the hidden work, the kind that happens when heaven draws the curtains and does its most precise work in private. There is a reason your path felt isolated at times, a reason doors closed without explanation, a reason you learned how to walk alone before you were ever asked to walk alongside anyone else. This was not abandonment. It was assignment. God hides what He intends to preserve. When something carries weight, real weight, it cannot be exposed too early. Seeds do not grow in the open air. They are buried first, covered, pressed into darkness, and from the outside, it looks like nothing is happening, but underground, something essential is forming. Roots, stability, strength that won't snap when pressure comes. Your hidden season was not inactivity. It was depth. While others were being affirmed publicly, you were being anchored privately. While others learned how to perform, you were learning how to discern. While others chased momentum, you were being trained to recognize peace. And that difference will matter more than you know. Chosen one. Many people want elevation, but few are willing to survive obscurity without losing themselves. You did. Even when it hurt, even when it confused you, even when you wondered if God had changed his mind. He had not. There are versions of you that could not be trusted with what is coming now. Versions that would have settled too soon, compromised discernment, or attached to what felt good instead of what was God. So, heaven slowed your steps, not to frustrate you, but to mature you. Think back, not with regret, but with honesty. The desires you had years ago, the prayers you prayed before you understood yourself fully. If God had answered them exactly when you asked, you might have mistaken intensity for alignment, chemistry for covenant, attention for love. And God, in his mercy, said no, not forever, but for then. The hidden season is where God removes what would distract you from what would sustain you. This is why you felt misunderstood, why people couldn't quite place you, why you were overlooked in rooms where you should have stood out. Familiar spirits often cannot discern future weight. They judge by what is visible now, not by what is being prepared. Even Jesus was hidden for 30 years. 30 years of silence before a few years of fulfillment. Not because he lacked power, but because timing matters. Chosen one. You were not delayed because you were weak. You were delayed because what you carry requires timing, context, and maturity. And maturity does not come from comfort. It comes from endurance, from waiting without becoming bitter, from trusting without constant reassurance. There were nights you asked God to just explain, to give you clarity, a sign, something tangible, and instead, he gave you endurance. He taught you how to breathe through uncertainty, how to stand without validation, how to hear his voice when everything else went quiet. That is not loss. That is training. In the hidden season, God was rewiring your expectations. He was teaching you the difference between being desired and being chosen, between being pursued and being aligned, between noise and peace. And now, your spirit no longer leaps at every opportunity. It listens, it waits, it discerns. That change did not happen by accident. You may not realize it yet, but you no longer chase what once would have consumed you. You no longer beg for what once would have broken your heart to lose. You no longer attach quickly to what feels familiar but unstable. That is growth. That is readiness. Chosen one. The hidden season also protected you from carrying someone else's expectations instead of God's assignment. It stripped away the need to prove yourself. It separated your worth from outcomes. And it taught you how to remain whole, even when something you wanted deeply was withheld. That wholeness matters, because what God aligns you with next is not meant to complete you. It is meant to walk with you. And only those who have learned to stand alone can walk in true partnership without losing themselves. You are being prepared to hold something sacred without turning it into an idol, to receive love without making it your identity, to be chosen without making it your source. This is why heaven took its time. There were moments in the hidden season when you felt like life was happening to you instead of for you. Moments when your prayers felt like echoes, when obedience felt unrewarded, when faith felt heavy, but even then, God was paying attention to how you carried yourself when no one was watching. He noticed the way you stayed soft, the way you kept believing, the way you didn't harden your heart, even after disappointment. That matters in the kingdom. Chosen one. Some people are visible early because they are light assignments. Others are hidden longer because they are foundation carriers, and foundations are never built in public. They are laid deep, quietly, carefully, because everything else will stand on them later. You are a foundation carrier, and now, as this hidden season begins to loosen its grip, you may feel something shifting. Not externally yet, but internally. A readiness that is calm, not anxious. A hope that feels steady, not desperate. A peace that doesn't need constant reassurance. That is how you know this season is changing. Not because everything is suddenly clear, but because you are no longer afraid of the unknown. Stay with me. Chosen one, because the next layer we must talk about is the part that was hardest to carry, the prolonged delay, the kind of waiting that tested your faith, stretched your patience, and forced you to confront the question you never wanted to ask out loud. God, why is this taking so long? We will go there together. Gently, honestly, without judgment. Do not leave now. You are closer to understanding than you think. Chosen one, let us stay right here for a moment, not rushing past what was heavy, not spiritualizing what genuinely hurt, because the delay you endured was not brief. It was not a passing season. It stretched. It lingered. And there were moments when waiting stopped feeling holy and started feeling exhausting. This is where faith was tested, not in the beginning, when hope was fresh, but later, when time passed and nothing seemed to change. At first, you waited with expectation. Then you waited with patience, and eventually, you waited with questions. There were moments you wondered if you had misheard God, if you had held on to a promise that was never meant for you, if maybe the message was right, but the timing or the person was wrong. You didn't want to doubt, but you were human. And the silence grew louder the longer it lasted. Chosen one. God is not offended by those questions. He saw the nights you stared at the ceiling, the prayers that no longer had many words, the sighs that carried more weight than full sentences. He saw the way you kept showing up to life, even when something inside you felt stalled. And here is what you must understand. Now, the prolonged delay was not about teaching you how to wait longer. It was about teaching you how to wait differently. In the early stages, waiting was filled with anticipation. Later, it became filled with endurance. And somewhere in the middle, something important shifted. You stopped counting days and started learning how to live fully, even without answers. That shift was not accidental. There are promises that can be carried by excitement, and there are promises that require stability. God does not release heavy things into unstable hands. So he waited, and while he waited, he strengthened you in ways you didn't recognize at the time. The prolonged delay exposed what was still fragile. It revealed the places where fear still spoke louder than trust, where old wounds still influenced your expectations, where past disappointments quietly shaped how you imagined the future. God was not withholding from you. He was clearing space within you. Chosen one. Sometimes God delays not because the blessing isn't ready, but because you are still healing from what would cause you to mishandle it. You didn't want to hear that before. It would have felt unfair, but now you can see it more clearly. You are not as reactive as you once were, not as easily shaken, not as willing to settle just to end the waiting. That change did not come from comfort. It came from time. There were moments during the delay when you watched others receive what you had prayed for. You celebrated them sincerely, but privately wondered why your turn seemed to be skipped. You tried not to compare, but the question lingered, why them and not me? Chosen one. God never skips over those he intends to use deeply. He circles back with intention. The path just looks different. Your delay was never about being overlooked. It was about alignment. Because what God is preparing for you is not isolated. It is connected to another timeline, another life, another heart that also needed preparation. He was not just shaping you. He was shaping the other side of the promise as well. And this is the part that changes how you see everything. The waiting felt long because it wasn't only yours. 2 lives were being prepared. 2 sets of wounds needed healing. 2 perspectives needed refining. 2 hearts needed to learn how to choose peace over fear, truth over illusion, and commitment over comfort. If God had released this connection earlier, one of you would have arrived ready and the other would not. And that imbalance would have cost you more than the delay ever did. So heaven waited, not out of neglect, but out of wisdom. Chosen one. There were seasons when you thought God was saying no, when he was actually saying not yet. And not yet can feel cruel when you're tired. But now, looking back, you can begin to see how much you have changed in the waiting. You no longer romanticize struggle. You no longer crave intensity at the cost of peace. You no longer believe love must hurt to be real. That alone tells you something has shifted. The prolonged delay also taught you how to hear God without constant signs, how to trust without needing reassurance every step of the way, how to rest in uncertainty without spiraling into fear. That is spiritual maturity. And maturity attracts what immaturity repels. Chosen one. What you are stepping into next requires someone who can remain grounded when emotions rise. Someone who can respond instead of react. Someone who can discern the difference between old triggers and present truth. That someone is you now. You didn't become this version overnight. You became this version because you waited longer than you wanted to, and you did not quit. There were moments you wanted to give up, to shut down the hope entirely, to tell yourself you were fine alone forever. And part of that was self-protection. But part of it was also evidence that you were tired of waiting in uncertainty. God saw that too. And instead of rushing the promise to soothe your exhaustion, he allowed the waiting to finish its work, so that when what he promised finally arrives, you won't receive it from a place of depletion, but from a place of strength. The prolonged delay did not weaken your faith. It purified it. It removed bargaining. It removed timelines. It removed expectations built on fear. What remains is trust, quiet, steady, rooted, chosen one. If the waiting had ended earlier, you might have attached out of relief. Now, you will attach out of recognition. And that difference changes everything. Stay with me, because the next part touches something tender, something that caused confusion and pain in ways you may not have fully processed yet. We need to talk about the doubt that came from familiar voices, the questions raised by those closest to you, the way being misunderstood by your own people shaped your journey. Do not pull away now. What you are about to understand will bring clarity where there was once confusion, and peace where there was once quiet hurt. Chosen one. This is the part many people carry quietly, not because it didn't hurt, but because it hurt in a way that was difficult to explain. Being misunderstood by strangers is one thing. Being doubted by those closest to you is something else entirely. There were moments when you expected support and instead received silence. Moments when you hoped for encouragement and were met with questions. Not cruel questions, not always spoken harshly, but heavy ones nonetheless. When are you going to move on? Why are you still waiting? Maybe it's time to be more realistic. Sometimes those words came from love. Sometimes from fear. Sometimes from their own unresolved disappointments. But regardless of the source, they landed in tender places. Chosen one. What made it harder was not just what they said it was, what they couldn't see. They measured your life by visible milestones, by timelines they understood, by outcomes that made sense to them. But your life was never meant to follow familiar patterns. God does not explain future assignments to people who are only trained to interpret the present. And many of those closest to you were never meant to understand your path, not because they didn't love you, but because they didn't carry your calling. Even Jesus was questioned by his own family. Familiarity often blinds people to what God is doing quietly. Those who watched you grow may still see you as who you were, not who you are becoming. And that disconnect can feel deeply isolating. There were moments when their doubt made you question yourself, when you wondered if maybe they were right, if maybe you were holding on to something unrealistic, if maybe your patience looked too much like avoidance, or your faith looked too much like passivity. But chosen one, faith does not always look impressive to those who don't understand timing. God never asked you to convince them. He asked you to trust him. And this is important. Listen carefully. The lack of understanding from your own people was not meant to shame you. It was meant to strengthen your discernment, to teach you how to stand without needing approval, to help you separate love from agreement, to know when to listen and when to stay anchored in what God already spoke. There were conversations you left feeling drained, not because anyone attacked you, but because you felt unseen, misread, simplified. And over time, you learned to keep certain things between you and God. That was wisdom, not withdrawal. Chosen one. Some assignments are so personal that God protects them by keeping them misunderstood until the time of manifestation. If everyone could see it early, too many voices would interfere with the process. Too many opinions would try to shape something that was never theirs to carry. So God allowed the misunderstanding, not to wound you, but to refine you. This is where your inner strength was built, in the moments you chose not to defend yourself, in the moments you stopped explaining, in the moments you let God be your advocate. And slowly, something shifted. You stopped needing their validation. You stopped needing them to get it. You stopped shrinking your hope to make others comfortable. That is maturity. Chosen one. There is also something generational at play here, something deeper than personal misunderstanding. You carry a pattern-breaking assignment, and those who live within the pattern often resist the one who disrupts it. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but instinctively. Your life challenges old timelines, old beliefs, old expectations. And when you don't conform, it can unsettle those who found safety in familiarity. So they questioned you. They worried. They projected their fears. But God was not confused. He never needed their agreement to move in your life. There were moments you felt alone in rooms full of people. Moments when your calling felt heavy because no one else was carrying it with you. And yet, even then, God was near closer than you realized. He was teaching you how to walk with Him before He ever asked you to walk with anyone else. That is why your confidence now feels quieter, why your faith no longer needs an audience, why you can stand in uncertainty without falling apart. Chosen one, the misunderstanding did not delay your promise. It insulated it. It kept you from being pulled off course by voices that meant well but lacked vision. It forced you to lean into God instead of consensus. And now, something is changing. You may notice that the same people who once questioned your waiting are becoming quieter. Not because they suddenly understand, but because your peace speaks louder than your explanations ever did. Peace is evidence. God is not in a hurry to vindicate you publicly. He prefers to do it through fruit, through timing, through alignment so precise that explanations become unnecessary. Chosen one, the next season will answer questions you never had the strength to respond to. Not with arguments, but with reality. Stay with me, because now we must talk about why your journey felt heavier than others, why the resistance felt deeper, why the stakes seemed higher. What you are carrying is not just personal, it is generational. And understanding that will change how you see everything that came before and everything that is coming next. Chosen one. If there were moments when your journey felt heavier than it should have, if you ever wondered why simple things seemed complicated for you while others moved forward with ease, this is where the deeper truth begins to surface. What you have been carrying was never just personal, it was generational. There are callings that affect a season, and there are callings that affect a bloodline. Yours belongs to the second kind. This is why the resistance felt disproportionate, why the waiting was not just long, but weighty, why it felt like unseen pressure followed you even when circumstances looked calm on the surface. You weren't just navigating your own life, you were standing at the edge of something that required heaven's precision. Chosen one. God often chooses one person in a family line to stand in the gap. One who feels more deeply, one who questions patterns, one who refuses to repeat what no longer brings life. That person often feels out of place, not because they are lost, but because they are assigned. You may have sensed it growing up, a feeling that you didn't quite fit the mold, that your spirit carried questions others avoided, that your heart was drawn toward healing, truth, and peace in ways that felt unfamiliar to those around you. That wasn't sensitivity. That was discernment awakening early. And with that awakening came responsibility, not one God placed harshly on you, but one He trusted you with, because He knew you would endure the process without losing compassion. He knew you would question without becoming cynical. He knew you would break cycles without becoming hardened by them. Chosen one. The delay you experienced was not just about aligning a promise. It was about ensuring that when the breakthrough came, it would not only bless you, but reset what comes after you. Some patterns cannot be broken quickly. Some strongholds do not release without depth. Some blessings cannot arrive until the ground beneath them is healed. That is why God took His time with you. There were generational narratives at work, beliefs about love, stability, worth, survival that had been passed down quietly for years. They weren't always spoken, but they were felt. And without realizing it at first, you began to question them. You felt resistance toward repeating what no longer aligned with truth. That questioning cost you comfort. It isolated you at times. It made you feel misunderstood. It made the waiting feel heavier. But it also made you free. Chosen one. You were never meant to inherit what limited those before you. You were meant to transform it, to soften where things had grown hard, to bring peace where there had been striving, to introduce rest where survival had been normalized. This is why the blessing attached to your life could not be rushed. God does not place generational assignments into hands that are not emotionally and spiritually prepared. He does not entrust legacy-level breakthroughs to those who still need external validation to feel secure. He waits until humility, discernment, and steadiness are formed. And now, those things are present in you. You no longer chase approval. You no longer fear being misunderstood. You no longer equate love with struggle. That alone tells you something has shifted. Chosen one. There is also a reason your waiting intersected with healing. Why God dealt gently but thoroughly with your heart. Why certain wounds surfaced during seasons when you thought you were simply stuck. Those wounds were not obstacles. They were access points. Healing had to happen at the root, not just for you, but for what flows through you, so that what you pass on carries peace instead of pressure, clarity instead of confusion, safety instead of survival. This is how God redeems bloodlines, not through force, not through speed, but through one willing heart at a time. You are that heart. And this is why what comes next will not just feel like relief. It will feel like alignment, like something clicking into place that you couldn't force before. Because when generational resistance lifts, it does so quietly but powerfully. You may not see fireworks, you may not hear applause, but you will feel peace settle in ways that feel unfamiliar and right. Chosen one. The breakthrough connected to your life is not loud. It is stable. It is sustainable. It is the kind that changes how future chapters are written. This is also why God has been careful with who He aligns you with. Because generational assignments require shared discernment, shared maturity, shared peace. The next connection in your life is not meant to reopen old wounds. It is meant to help you protect the healing you fought to gain. And that requires readiness on both sides. Heaven has been preparing more than you know. Chosen one. As this generational weight begins to lift, you may notice something subtle but profound. Your body feels less tense. Your thoughts feel clearer. Your spirit feels less hurried. That is not coincidence. That is alignment settling in. You are no longer carrying what was never meant to follow you into the future. And now, we must talk about the final internal shift, the one that signals true readiness. Not perfection, not completion, but steadiness. Because elevation does not come to those who are excited. It comes to those who are anchored. Stay with me. What comes next will help you recognize just how much you have changed and why this next season will meet you differently than anything before it. Chosen one. Before anything shifts on the outside, something settles on the inside. Not excitement, not urgency, but a calm that feels unfamiliar if you've spent years in anticipation. This is the moment many people overlook because it doesn't announce itself loudly. It arrives quietly, steadily, like a deep breath you didn't realize you were holding finally being released. This is readiness, not the kind that says, "I have everything figured out," but the kind that says, "I am no longer afraid of what's coming." If you're honest with yourself, you can feel the difference now. The longing is still there, but it no longer controls you. The hope remains, but it no longer feels desperate. You are no longer counting days or scanning every moment for signs. You are present, grounded, steady. That did not happen by accident. Chosen one. God does not bring elevation into chaos. He brings it into alignment, and alignment always begins internally. Long before anything changes in your circumstances, He changes how you carry yourself within them. There was a time when waiting made you restless, when uncertainty triggered anxiety, when silence felt like abandonment. But now, silence feels different. It feels neutral, even safe. You are no longer threatened by the unknown. because you have learned how to remain whole within it. That is readiness. You are no longer asking, "When will this happen?" You are asking, "Who am I becoming?" And that shift matters. The version of you that exists now does not need rescue. It does not need distraction. It does not need intensity to feel alive. You have learned how to sit with yourself without falling apart. You have learned how to trust without clinging. You have learned how to release outcomes without closing your heart. Chosen one. Many people want the promise. Few are willing to become the person who can receive it without losing themselves. That is why the waiting refined you. It slowed you down enough to notice your own patterns, to heal your reactions, to develop discernment instead of impulse. You no longer confuse attraction with alignment. You no longer equate consistency with boredom. You no longer mistake peace for lack of passion. Those are not small changes. They are signs of maturity. And maturity is what attracts what is sustainable. Chosen one. Readiness is also revealed by what no longer triggers you. Situations that once pulled you into overthinking now pass through you without taking root. Words that once wounded deeply now land softly and move on. You are no longer building your identity around what others think or do. That is strength, not loud strength, quiet strength, the kind that does not need to prove itself. God is drawn to that posture because it mirrors His own nature, steady, intentional, unrushed. When He moves with purpose, not panic. This is why what is coming next will meet you differently than it would have before. It will not knock you off balance. It will not awaken fear. It will not trigger old wounds. It will feel fitting, natural, like something that arrives without disturbing your peace. That is how you will recognize it. Chosen one. Readiness does not mean the absence of nerves. It means the absence of fear-driven urgency. You may still feel emotion when the next chapter begins, but it will not feel chaotic. It will feel grounded, like something you are stepping into, not something chasing you down. And that matters deeply, because what God aligns you with next is not meant to consume your life. It is meant to support it, to walk beside you, not pull you forward, to add stability, not complication, to deepen your peace, not disturb it. This is why the waiting could not end sooner. Earlier versions of you would have been overwhelmed by what is now approaching. Not because it was wrong, but because you were still learning how to hold yourself steady. Now, you are different. You are rooted. You are less reactive. You are less driven by fear of loss. Chosen one. You have learned how to choose rest over rush, truth over fantasy, alignment over appearance. That learning did not come easily. It came through disappointments that forced you to slow down, through closed doors that made you reevaluate, through silence that taught you how to listen inwardly. All of it shaped you into someone who can now receive without gripping too tightly. This is the kind of readiness heaven recognizes, and because of that, you may notice that your prayers have changed. They are no longer frantic. They are quieter, more trusting, less detailed, more surrendered. You are no longer telling God how to move. You are trusting Him to move. That trust is not passive. It is powerful. Chosen one. The final shift before elevation is often this: you stop trying to control what you once begged for. You loosen your grip. You allow God to handle timing. And in doing so, you create space for something holy to enter without resistance. You are in that space now. Do not rush ahead of it. Do not try to predict what comes next. Do not rehearse outcomes. Remain present. Because the next part of this journey is not about preparation anymore. It is about sealing. And that requires stillness, agreement, and trust. Stay with me. What comes next will not ask more from you. It will strengthen what is already within you. Chosen one. Now we slow down even more. There is nothing left to prove, nothing left to chase, nothing you need to figure out in this moment. What has been spoken has already landed where it needed to land. And now, this space becomes sacred, not because of words, but because of agreement. Let your body rest where it is. Unclench your jaw, loosen your shoulders. Allow your breathing to become steady. You are not late. You are not forgotten. You are not waiting in vain. You are right where God needs you to be. Before we close, we are going to do what heaven always invites at moments like this. We are going to seal what has been revealed, not with effort, not with emotion, but with prayer, a quiet prayer, a steady prayer, one that does not beg, but agrees. If you are able, close your eyes. If not, simply soften your focus. Let your heart listen. Heavenly Father, we come before you now without rushing, without striving, without fear. We come not asking you to convince us, but to steady us, not to prove anything, but to receive what you have already been preparing. Thank you for being the God of timing, not hurried, not careless, but precise, faithful, and deeply personal. Thank you for every season of waiting that did not break us, for every delay that protected us, for every closed door that spared us from what would have cost us peace. Father, you saw the nights when the questions were heavy. You heard the prayers that had no words. You noticed the faith that remained even when hope felt tired. And today, we acknowledge the truth. Nothing was wasted, not one tear, not one season, not one moment of silence. We ask now, that you seal this message in the heart of the one listening. Seal it deeper than emotion, deeper than circumstance. Seal it in their spirit, where fear cannot reach it. Lord, we release impatience. We release the pressure of comparison. We release the belief that we must rush to be worthy. We let go of the idea that delay means denial. We let go of the lie that we are behind. We let go of the need to control outcomes that belong to you. Replace striving with peace. Replace anxiety with trust. Replace uncertainty with quiet confidence. Father, align us fully, not just with what you are sending, but with who you are calling us to be. Strengthen our discernment. Anchor our hearts. Keep us steady when the moment comes. We ask that whatever you have prepared for us would arrive at the right time, in the right way, without confusion and without fear. Let it come gently. Let it come clearly. Let it come carrying peace. If there are final things that need to be released, help us release them now. Old expectations, old wounds, old fears that no longer belong in this season. We trust you with the timing. We trust you with the process. We trust you with the outcome. And we rest. Chosen one, now we speak simple declarations. You do not need to say them out loud unless you want to. Let them settle inwardly, like truth finding its place. I am not late. I am aligned with God's timing. What was delayed for my protection. I am prepared for what God is sending. I do not chase what belongs to me. What is from God will meet me in peace. I trust the process. I trust the timing. I trust the one who holds my future. I am ready, not rushed, not anxious, not afraid. I am steady. I am anchored. I am at peace. Let those words rest inside you. There is nothing more you need to do tonight. No next step to calculate. No sign to chase. No pressure to act. Just remain. Sometimes the most powerful response to God is stillness. Stillness that says, I trust you enough to stop reaching. Chosen one, if this time felt meaningful, if something inside you softened, settled, or quietly agreed, you may write these words in the comments when you are ready. I receive this. I trust God's timing. Not for me, not for the channel, but as a gentle declaration to your own heart. And if you know someone who is waiting quietly, someone who has carried delay with grace and exhaustion at the same time, you may share this with them, not to convince, only to comfort. Now, let this moment end the way it began. Slowly, safely, in peace. Stay open. Stay anchored. Stay gentle with yourself. What God has prepared for you is not rushing toward you in chaos. It is approaching with clarity, and you will be ready because you already are. Rest now. Chosen one, you are held.